Okay, happy Monday. It's still Monday, I believe. We got a lot to talk about. We got Chanukah Thursday night. So let's talk about Chanukah really quickly. Chanukah, three names of Chanukah. Three reasons why Chanukah is called Chanukah. Number one, Chanukah comes from the word Chanukas, which means to rededicate. We rededicated the holy temple. They trashed the place. The Greeks came in and they completely trashed the place. They were offering up pigs. They said, who cares about lambs and whatever? We'll offer up pigs, no big deal. They tipped over the menorah. They trashed. They systematically, methodically made ritually impure all of the oil that was found. So we had to rededicate that, reset up the Beis HaMikdash. That's why Chanukah reading, the Torah reading for Chanukah, all 8 days, we're going to read about the 12 tribes' dedication to the Mishkan, to the tabernacle, right? It's going to be very repetitive. If you walk into shul, every aliyah sounds very repetitive. It's actually kind of funny. Okay, that's one reason. Another reason why it's called Chanukah is because Chanu Chafhei. There was a big war. There was a big war against the Yevanim, the Hashmonaim family. I'm assuming everybody basically knows the story. But the Hashmonaim family, originally led by Yochanan Kohen Gadol, the Yochanan, the high priest, whose daughter, Yehudis, was wickedly awesome, amazing, the real deal. Talk about her in a moment. They led a revolt, and 150, an army of 150 Maccabees. Maccabees is an acronym for Mi Kamecha Be'elam Hashem, who is like you, God. That was inscribed on their shield. And they defeated the Greek-Syrian army of 30,000, 40,000. Unbelievable miracle. The fight ended on the 24th day of Kislev. The 24th day of Kislev. Chanukah starts the 25th. So Chanukah is called Chanukah because Chanu Chafhei. They rested on the 25th. We won the war on the 24th, go into the temple, find the jug of oil. Still had a seal on it from the Kohen Gadol. Yeah, a seal meaning like you go inside a shopping, if you go shopping, and it says, if the seal is broken, do not drink. So they found a seal of the pure olive oil, still intact. I guess it's hard for me to relate to, but it's an unbelievable miracle, an incredible miracle. That happened on the 25th. So they rested from the war. I'm saying this in so many words, I really apologize. They rested on the 25th because they weren't fighting anymore. But then they found the miracle of, oh my gosh, wow, this is great. We found a jug of oil. The 26th was the miracle of the oil actually coming back up, right? They only had enough oil to last for 1 day, lasted for 8 days. What's 8 days? Why 8 days? Who cares about 8 days? Why do you got to make such a miracle? 8 days, one, because it took 4 days to travel from Jerusalem to Tzipori, northern Israel, get the best olives. To make olive oil, you need special olives. You can't just use any kind of olive. So any of you who try to make olive oil from your olives probably didn't work. Like super fat, weird, like mutant olives, Chernobyl olives. And then you have to travel to Tzipori, get the olives. It takes 4 days by donkey or whatever, and then it takes 4 days to come back down. So it's 8 days. Why did God give us this miracle? I teach middle school kids. You guys know that? So one of the kids asked me, why did God make such a miracle? What was the point of it? So what you should, oh my gosh, one second, I have to pause this. Hold on one second. I apologize. Hold on 1 second. Okay, I apologize for that. Then why did they make a miracle? Okay, you don't need pure olive oil to light the menorah. You don't need pure olive oil. You could have used any olive oil. But the Jewish people decided to use pure olive oil. And they said, we want ones that were not tameh, not ritually impure by anybody. And we're willing to light the menorah 1 day with pure olive oil, as opposed to what was suggested was just light a little bit each day, maybe so it'll last for 15 minutes, 5 minutes each day for the 8 days until it gets back, or let's just light it with olive oil that's not pure. He said, no, we're lighting it with pure olive oil. And because it's called mehudar, we did it in such a beautiful way. We did it there's two ways to do a mitzvah. Yeah, you can do the basic mitzvah of I can I don't know. So let's say tzedakah. So you can give tzedakah in two ways. You can give tzedakah by just putting it in a you see someone poor, you could just not even look at him, and you could just give it to somebody else and send it to him. Send it to him, not even look at him, just give him the tzedakah, and you did the mitzvah of tzedakah. Another way, and the most mahudar way of doing it, is looking the person in the eye, smiling at them, giving them words of encouragement, and then handing it to them. It's called mahudar. It's more beautiful. The Jewish people decided to do it the most beautiful way. There's so much to talk about in Channukah. I have to do another class. I can't do it all here because I have to talk about the parsha also. We did it. God said, you went the extra mile, I'll go the extra mile. I'll make this thing last 8 days. And that's exactly what happened. Because we went the extra mile, Hashem gave it to us so that it lasted 8 days, enough days to make the olive oil again. What do I want to say? There's a few things I want to say. Number one, the whole fight of the Yevonim, of the Greeks against the Jewish people, was a fight against God. Yeah, I think that's the way this works. What's the difference between a Jew and a Greek back in the day? So when a Jew wakes up, the first thing he does is he says, Moda Ani. I praise God. Yeah, thank you, God. I acknowledge God. What does the Yevonim do? The Greeks, when they first wake up in the morning, they go like this. Oh, they start kissing their muscles. It's just I thought that was the funniest thing ever. I saw somebody do that one time. Kiss their muscles, and they're like, oh, I'm so beautiful. They have a mirror of themselves right in front of them when they wake up, and they say, you are gorgeous. Oh, and the body is gorgeous. And let's talk about how beautiful the mind is, which also has its place and it has its time. Forget God. It was all about forgetting God. Who cares about God? The idea of tuma and tahara, that was outlawed by the Greek people. The idea of purities, these purities, impurities, kosher, it doesn't make anything that didn't make any sense. It was outlawed. Kosher was outlawed. Bris milah, or circumcision, was outlawed. Anything with tuma and tahara was outlawed. Name whatever things that didn't make any sense, it was outlawed. So the Jewish people, as a real way to stick it to the Greeks, because the Greeks were all about pure olive oil, who cares? They let the Jewish people bring sacrifices, because that they can understand sacrifices. It's like tzedakah. Tzedakah is a sacrifice. I worked hard for it. I'm giving it to a higher purpose. I'm going to give it to something communal. I'm giving it to a higher power, let's say. Okay, the concept of sacrifice, that's okay. But why does it have to be a donkey? Or why is it not a donkey? You can't bring a donkey. Why does it have to be a lamb or a sheep or a goat? They brought pigs. And you know who was behind it? The Jews. Hellenism was all about worshiping the body and forgetting about God. And it's a problem that we face every single generation. It's the same thing. We have the struggle within ourselves. We have such a struggle. So so as a way to stick it to the Greeks, they said, we're not going to use any olive oil. We're going to use tahor, pure olive oil, ritually pure olive oil. That's something that the Greeks, they couldn't, and the Jewish people that were very Greek, acted very Greek, I'm more Greek than the Greeks. They could not stand it. They couldn't understand it. They hated it. And that's exactly what it did, and God had a lot of pleasure from it. Okay, this is the story of Yehudis. We spoke about she killed the king, Antiochus. It seems like she killed Antiochus from, she got him really drunk and chopped off his head. I don't have much time to talk about that. So we eat cheese. A lot of us, she fed them cheese. I'm sorry, what's the story? The story goes, she basically got him drunk. She was a great cheesemaker. She got him really drunk. She acted like a spy for him. So she built a lot of trust with him. She got him really drunk. She gave him a lot of cheese. He got very thirsty, gave him a lot of wine. And then he fell asleep. He passed out and she chopped off his head. She took his head, went to Jerusalem, showed all of the Greeks, I have the head of your king. They flipped out and they ran away. So therefore, women have a special mitzvah when it comes to the Chanukah menorah. The men like the menorah, unless you're a woman is single or she's she lives at home alone. You light your own menorah, but the women are not allowed to do anything for 30 minutes. They sit there and they look at the candles, or they study, they learn, they converse, but you're not allowed to do any work for 30 minutes, the first 30 minutes of doing the menorah, of lighting the menorah. Two reasons given. Number one, the gezerah, the decree of the Greeks against the Jewish women, was more harsh than it was for the men. The men, they weren't allowed to study Torah, and they weren't allowed to do certain mitzvahs. Fine. But for the women, if you were a single woman, you were engaged, you had to be intimate with a minister before you could be intimate with your chassan. So that was not good, obviously, to say the least. And another reason is because of Yehudis. To remember Yehudis, she was the one that basically saved. She made the big turning point in the victory of the Jewish people. And because she had cheese, she served the king cheese to get him really thirsty, to get him drunk, and then chop off his head. There's a custom to have cheese on Chanukah, in addition to oily foods like latkes and donuts. We light the menorah on the opposite side, in the doorway, on the opposite side of the mezuzah. Yeah, so the mezuzah is on your right side, the Chanukah menorah is on the left side. We do not light it necessarily near a window or outside. That was a custom that changed during the 18th century. You can still do it. It's not our custom, the Chabad custom. They do it in Jerusalem, but even the Chabad Hasidim in Jerusalem light it on the outside, and they also light it inside their own home. The reason why we light it in the doorway is so that you're surrounded by mitzvahs completely. It's an opportunity to be completely surrounded by a mitzvah. All right, because you got the mezuzah on the right and you got your menorah on the left. Okay, so there's three miracles. There's three miracles that comes with Chanukah: the winning of the victory over the Greeks, the finding of the jug of oil, and the miracle of lighting 8 days of the menorah. Just because we don't have so much time, I'll have to just do a separate class on Chanukah. There's so much more to talk about Chanukah. Very practical things. By the way, you should know Chanukah wasn't established until the next year, right? They didn't establish all these miracles happen. Everyone's like, "Whoa, great miracle!" They didn't establish it as a Yom Tiv until the following year, when they saw that all the miracles were happening again. In other words, the spiritual energy that was accomplished, that came to the surface on Chanukah, the first Chanukah, they saw it again the next year. Again, this concept that every year, the spiritual energy of that day revisits itself, right? Time works in a spiral. So Pesach, we relive Pesach every single year on the first night of Pesach. Rosh Hashanah, it's happening each year. That's why there's special tefillas, and we act a certain way, and we do certain customs to tap into that energy. Chanukah, they saw that it was happening again the next year, and it happens every year, so then they made it into a Yom Tiv. Because of the Yom Tiv, you're not allowed to fast, and you're not allowed to do eulogies. We don't do fasts, and we don't do eulogies. We say Hallel every single day. We read the Torah every single day. Some have the custom of making a su'uda, an extra, like a little bit of a meal. That is not our custom, and that doesn't seem to be the custom amongst the Jewish people. It's not a custom that was taken upon the Jewish people. It's not like it's a certain Yom Tiv. And the reason why, one of the reasons why, is because we didn't really fix ourselves. It was a big civil war for the Jewish people, to be honest. We fought the Greeks, the Greek ideology, Hellenism, but the basic Mikdash was destroyed 200 years later. We didn't get our act together. And that's why most of the Jews continued to live in Bavel. They did not live in Israel. They lived in Babylonia. And that's because they saw that living in Jerusalem, like, we're not up to par. We're not like who we used to be. And we never really corrected ourselves. We never really fixed ourselves. We kept kind of stumbling by design, which we can talk about at a different time. Okay, let's go into the parsha because we don't have so much time. Maybe we can make a connection between the parsha and Chanukah. See if you know what it is. Okay. Here we go. Okay, parsha is Vayeishev. Vayeishev means to settle. The name of the parsha, you should know this, the name of a parsha encapsulates the entire theme of the parsha. So the big question is, amongst our sages, Vayeishev means to settle, like everything's fine and tranquil. This was everything but fine and tranquil. Talk about Vayeishev Yaakov. Yaakov settled and he was tranquil. There was nothing tranquil about his life right now. So how does that work? A few reasons are given. Number one, you have to know that it says there is no tranquility for tzaddikim. Tzaddikim are always moving. Righteous people are always moving. They have no tranquility. Number, their tranquility is in the world to come. They work very hard. They're not, which you have the tzaddik inside of you. You'll never have a tranquil life. Meaning you can have a tranquil mind. You can have a tranquil mind. That's actually what we're trying to do. It's called menuchas hadas. You're trying to have like a settled mind. But in terms of life without tribulations and trials and challenges, that will not happen. The Gemara says if it does happen, you do have a life of no challenges, you have to be very scared. That means God has abandoned you. What it means? God has abandoned you. You should get very nervous. So do not be jealous of people who seem to have like no problems in their life. It's not a good thing. Okay. So why is it called that he settled? Because ultimately what God wanted to do was give him a reward. He ultimately will have tranquility. In order for you to have a real, true tranquility, you have to have gone through basically all the trials and tribulations and issues that you could possibly enter into. Because then when you approach life, after you've gotten through them, those problems and issues don't seem like problems and issues anymore. If they happen to you again, they're not going to be such an issue. Not going to be an issue at all. Yeah? As you get older, small problems, big problems are really seen as small problems. So that's one of the explanations that's given. Ultimately, he's going to live in the land of Israel for the last 17 years of his life. And it's going to be the most tranquil and beautiful years of his life. He's only going to be going from simcha to simcha, from joy to joy, because he has so many children and grandchildren. It's like a nonstop weddings and brisses and kiddishes and all these great things. Now, it seems like Yaakov has favoritism towards Joseph. He gives him, and one of the reasons perhaps he gave him favoritism is because his mother passed away. He's going to have favoritism towards Benjamin. So he had a special need that he had, and so he showed him a little bit more care than and attention than the other children. Gemara seems to imply it was slightly inappropriate. Now, was it really inappropriate? It's a certain level. I mean, but for him, he should have known better. Yaakov should have known better. He's judged much more harshly, and he should have known better. He should have made sure he had attention for all of his kids. He gives him a multicolored coat, multicolored tunic. Joseph in the Technicolor coat. I think I saw a book like that once, which represents, why was it Technicolor? It represents kingship. He was crowning him basically the king. Basically, Reuven, the older brother, Reuven, acted very inappropriately. When Rachel passed away, Yaakov took Bilhah's bed and moved it into his room. So the handmaid of Rachel was more intimate and more close with Yaakov than Leah was. And Reuven was very offended by that. And he moved out Bilhah's bed. So he went into his father's room, removed the bed, and moved his mother's bed in there. And Yaakov was very, very upset by that. First of all, Yaakov basically was saying, Bilhah's an extension of Rachel. It's not like I like Bilhah more than Leah or any of the other wives. I'm trying to accomplish something over here. And you're interfering. And because of that, he got cut off from the firstborn rights. He still tried to keep those responsibilities, as we'll see, because he's going to protect Joseph. He's going to do the best he can. He doesn't protect him, but he's going to try to protect him. But because of that act, he lost the firstborn, the attribute of kingship, and it was given to Joseph, which was represented by the coat. Okay, so the brothers hated him. Now the brothers remained tzaddikim. Rashi tells us that they were still righteous people. They just saw things. They thought something was amiss. Joseph was constantly saying all these things about how he's better than the other brothers, and he's always tattletaling on how wrong they're doing. But the truth is, they're going to find that he wasn't doing it for selfish reasons. He was doing it selflessly. But the problem is, he didn't communicate well. He's got to be a better communicator. And because he didn't communicate well, they thought that he was like Esau, where Esau was tricking the father Yitzchak. Yeah, he tricked the father into thinking he was so righteous because he would say, "How do you tithe salt?" Now, you don't have to tithe salt. Anything that's very small, you don't have to give any tithes for. But the father was like, Yitzchak was like, "Oh, he's so righteous." Ultimately, he was just trying to trick his father into thinking, he was putting on, it was like very, shallow, very shallow. So they thought he was going to be another Esau and doing things wrong. And they're going to try to get rid of him. Now, it's very hard to understand this whole story. Even the Gemara says it's very hard to understand the story. The most evil of people do not sell their brothers. They might slander them or try to take their money or run away from them or something like that. But to sell them, that doesn't make any sense. So the whole story, you can see that it's divinely ordained. And where do we see that it's completely divinely ordained? this whole story that Joseph is going to be thrown into a pit and he's going to be sold and he's going to. Yaakov tells Joseph, your brothers are, go check up on your brothers. Your brothers are in Hebron and they're in Shechem. Go check up on them, which is very highly unusual because Yaakov knew that the brothers hated Joseph. So why would he send Joseph to go like, hey, go over there and see what they're doing and find out what they're doing, and then come back and give me a report? So this is the beginning of something very divinely ordained. On his way, the Torah out of nowhere says Joseph met a man, and whenever it says the man, it always refers to Gavriel, the angel of Gabriel. The reason why, and then he met Gabriel, and Gavriel told him exactly where they were. Why does the Torah get it? Why does the Torah say this? Out of nowhere, completely does not fit. Gemara, the Torah tells us you should know that this whole thing was divinely ordained. We're about to get into some very weird stuff. Yehuda is going to sleep with a harlot who he thinks is a harlot. Joseph's going to get sold by his brothers. I mean, like super bizarre stuff. And you should know it's all by the hand of God, which is a lesson for us that even though how weird things are in our lives, some things you're going to experience perhaps will be extremely bizarre, perhaps even embarrassing to talk about, but you should know that they're through the hand of God. It's all for a higher purpose. The higher purpose was the Jewish people needed to go down to Egypt and they needed to be enslaved for 400 years. Ultimately, we're only there for 200 years. We had to go down because we had to make the promise. God said, I made a promise to Abraham that you will go down to a nation, you'll be subjugated by them, and you'll come out very wealthy, and then you'll be able to receive the Torah. So we had to go, and this is putting everything in. This is the beginning of it all. Okay, let's see. It says that Reuven wanted to try to save him. Yeah, at first they wanted to kill him. Reuven said, no, let's just throw him in a pit. And he was going to come back, and he was going to get him. He was going to get him afterwards, but he was already sold by then. Very fascinating. The Torah tells us that Yitzchak knew that Joseph was alive the whole time. Joseph's going to get sold, and Yaakov's going to think they dip his coat in blood, and Yaakov thinks that his son was eaten by wild animals because there's blood all over it. Yitzchak's still alive, and Yitzchak knew, but Yitzchak tzaddikim, they don't reveal everything to us because they can tell, they're sensitive. They live in two worlds at the same time. They see that God does not want this to be revealed. God wants it to be revealed, he'll reveal it. That's why Abraham also didn't tell Sarah about the binding of Isaac that was about to happen. He didn't want to, and he took it to his grave. He never mentioned anything about it. We see that once for the next 20 odd years, Yaakov will never be consoled. He's never consoled, which is very interesting because the Gemara says that after time, one of the kindnesses that God gave the Jewish people, gave everybody, is forgetfulness. Now, forgetfulness could be a problem, obviously, but it can also be something good because you learn to forget the pain that you have. He never was consoled. And the reason why he was never consoled is because his son never really died. His son was never really passed away. Fine, they sold him, he gets on his way. Yehuda moves on, he moves to another place. Yehuda feels a certain level of responsibility. And he says, I think we did the wrong thing. I'm going to separate myself from my brothers, and I'm going to separate myself from my father, and I need to do some tshuva. He moves on, and through a series of interesting things, he ends up sleeping with a harlot. She's not really a harlot. Her name is Tamar, which means a date. And Tamar was a prophetess. And Tamar knew that King David was going to come from her. And so therefore, she knew that she had to, and that King David has to come from Yehuda. So she figured out a way. God gave Yehuda, he didn't really, lack of clarity, and he slept with, he was intimate with Tamar, and ultimately had a child. This is one of the few instances that God takes away free will. We see that he takes away free will from Yehuda. We certainly see that he takes away free will from King Pharaoh. This is the famous story that, you weren't allowed to act like a harlot. Yeah, prostitution was illegal then. And because of the times of Noah, they outlawed prostitution, and you were liable to death. They found out that she was a harlot. She was pregnant, and she didn't act right. But They were about to burn her at the stake, and basically after Yehuda didn't have any money to pay her, so she said, "Give me your staff and give me your ring, and I'll hold them as a guarantor until you come back and bring me money." And then she ran away. So she gave it to her, and she ran away. She gets burnt to the stake. She's getting ready to be thrown into a fire. They ask Yehuda. He didn't know who she was. He asked Yehuda, "What's the law of this woman who slept with she was a harlot?" He said that you have to throw her in a fire. So they're getting ready to throw her in a fire, and she says, let me say one last thing. She goes, "I'm going to reveal to you who I was intimate with." And she held out, "Whoever this staff and this ring belongs to, that's the one." And Yehuda went up and said, "That was me. I was the one that did that." And she was willing to throw herself in the fire than to embarrass somebody else. And here the Gemara says, embarrassing somebody else is like throwing them into a pit of fire. It's something that lasts forever. You're not allowed. It's one of the worst things you could possibly do. It's as if you killed them. It's more than you killed them. You killed them in a very painful way. Somehow, though, it's all fine and dandy. Once Yehuda says, that was me. Bring her down." I don't know. Things seem to be fine, and that's that. We don't have much time, but just to end it over here, Joseph ends up getting sold to Potiphar, to a person named Potiphar. Potiphar was a minister to King Pharaoh, and he had a wife who had the hots for Joseph. Joseph was exceptionally good looking, and he did his hair to make himself look really good looking. But he was a very righteous person. Nevertheless, he was just immature. There's certainly maturity, and she was very attracted to him, but she also saw through stargazers that they were going to have there was going to be children and kings from him and her. So she said, "Okay, I have to be intimate with him because we're ultimately I see there's going to be great grandchildren from me that are ultimately going to be these kings." I don't know. And she was wrong. It was really her daughter. Her daughter is going to be married to Joseph. They're going to have Manasseh and Ephraim, and that's that. She's going to spend the entire time trying to seduce him. Very famous story, and he ultimately actually gives in. But Chassidus explains that God basically schlepped him out. He tried very hard. He ultimately gave in, and then the image of his father came, and the image of his father schlepped him out, took him out of that situation, and he was able to get free. I apologize for the strong delay. I will try to actually have a class tomorrow, explain more about Channukah, and do more. Just today was a little bit crazy. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, everybody. Thank you so much. I'll try to catch up with everybody tomorrow.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah, be well. Be well, everybody. Thank you for joining. Seriously. Great to see you.